Today's spooky spot, we're continuing our looks at the McFarlane Monsters Series 2, Twisted Land of Oz. This is the lion. Spot really was going to go and actually have a look at Toto, being that he is the counterpart or comrade, so to speak, of Dorothy. But based on the chapters that are noted inside, I want to continue the line. Even though we're not really reading the story itself, we're going to look at the lion next, as he contains chapters 2 and 3 of the Twisted Land of Oz mythology. The box, as you can see, carries over the same Twisted Land of Oz artwork there, which appears to have the broken up makeshift yellow brick road there and some shrubbery there. Very creepy, the eye that's sticking through the O of Zed, or of Oz there. Obviously it contains mature themes, recommend for ages 18, or I should say 15 and up. I wonder why 15 and not like 18. The back of the package, a very brief read-up, says McFarlane Toys' second monster series is based on the L. Frank Baum novel, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. The classic characters in this book receive a bit of a twist in this series, an artistic interpretation of what could have been in an alternate Wizard of Oz universe. The characters that we will be looking at are the Lion, which we are looking at today, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Wizard, Toto, and the aforementioned Dorothy that we already had a look at in a previous video. To check out more from the folks over at McFarlane Toys, head over to www.spawn.com. By the way, this set would have come out in 2003, so it's 13 years old, which I guess is kind of cool because we're looking at it in this spooky spot. And I always think, 13, unlucky number, Halloween, Friday the 13th, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of cool that we're looking at this 13 years later. That being said, Spot's going to take a blood-curdling break. Maybe not so much blood-curdling. But when we come back, I may be joined by Socrates. I don't really know. But we will be continuing our looks at the Twisted Land of Oz as we have a look at the lion. There's more heading your way, guys. Don't go anywhere. For the not quite cowardly lion, but certainly for the lion, he does also come included with the continued tales. This is be Chapter 2, New Skin, and Chapter 3, A Road Less Traveled. Like I said, a substantial read-up, not one of which I will read in this review. You can see rich green trees crowded the yellow stone road. Beyond that, nothing. This also would continue on with Chapter 4, which would be the Scarecrow, which would be an indication as well to us which one we're going to be looking at next. I wish I could have read all of this, but again, this would be just a substantial read. This is something you want to sit down and I wish this was actually more so in a book, possibly as an idea that McFarlane could revisit down the road, just putting a lot of this cool stuff and artwork and things like that into like a McFarlane best of book would be a really cool idea. So we're just going to put that to the side for now. The lion, I don't even want to call him Cowardly Lion because he's far from cowardly in this figure form. He does come with part of the broken, shambled road that was formerly the Yellow Brick Road. Having a look at him and Dorothy's stand, it doesn't really look like they line up in the way of paint or anything like that, but you could kind of just match them up depending on which way you want to have them placed. I guess you could have them like this, for example, then continue the road this way. Again, it's entirely up to you. There's no connector points or anything like that. So we'll put that to the side. The lion also does really need these stands because he does not stand at all. At least for me, he doesn't stand at all. Some of the accessories that come included with the lion, you know what? We'll look at one accessory and then everything else we'll kind of look at the line first and then go back to it because all of these are relative to him. He comes with this really cool, deadly looking bear trap, or perhaps a lion trap. There's blood all over it, which I'm sure is paired somewhat with some of the mangledness that this lion is going to have. Possibly his tail has been caught in this trap of sorts and caused all this decayed, exposed cording of the actual bones underneath his tail. It's really hard to, the poor lion, we don't know his backstory because we haven't read the story here, but it'd be interesting to see what has caused this line to be in this state. So I will probably give this the whole story a read afterwards. There is a chain. It's a plastic chain and attaches to a loop. Doesn't really attach to anything on the lion. I guess you can kind of feed it around his tail if you want to do it that way. But a good hinge open and close on the bear trap. Keep wanting to say bear trap, but the trap of sorts. By the way, these are a little on the pricklier side, so not that you're going to hurt yourself, but just be warned that these are a little on the prickly side. So you get that, which we can just put to the side. Everything else is going to be linked more to the lion. Let's look at the lion, and then we'll kind of look at all the other accessories. The lion is fantastic. This figure, like the Dorothy, is 13 years old. 13 years old, and yet to this day, I still think figures like this stand up. Now, granted, they don't have the posability that you come to find with new figure releases, but if you look at it strictly from a statue standpoint, this lion is stupendous. He is just... I'm guessing he was probably caught by the Munchkins and maybe heavily abused, judging by also his armor. I'm guessing he was a warrior at one point. But he has just a fantastic head sculpt. Let's look at the face now. And you know what? We'll bring the camera up there too. There we go. There's angst and certainly determination in his face. He looks, despite the fact that he's been heavily damaged, he still pushes on and wants to continue the fight. Now his hand is kind of looking like it's holding something. Well, that's a segue to one of the accessories. He comes with, his entrails. Part of his organs are hanging out of his body. There's like a little peg hole. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a peg hole right there. And you line up one of the ends to that, which is easier said than done, I have to admit, to actually get your finger in there and peg it into place. Kind of have to, his arm doesn't really want to move, so you have to kind of move his hand out of the way. And that would presumably peg into place on the one end, and then in his hand, there's a secondary hole right there, to which then you would plug in the other end. It's a lot easier to plug it into his hand than it is to plug into his stomach. Let's see if I can actually just give you a brief, rough idea of what you'd be looking at. You'd be looking at, something like that. Again, that poor lion. So as he still troops on, he still continues to move forward. You can see that he is near the end of his days, holding his organs in his hand. It gets worse. If you spin the figure around, and actually some of the other damaged areas, there's a hole right there in his leg. There's a couple holes on his back, for example. You have to take the additional accessories, one of which being a sword with curved handle. Now the sword is not sharp. There's no sharp tip to it. Because what you're supposed to actually do is line it up. I want to make sure there's really no specific, one hole has to be for this kind of thing. But, the instructions, if you're looking at on the back, they do have a specific placement. For example, that sword, according to the instructions or the image on the back, the sword goes right there. It just slots into this little hole here. He does also have a spear, as you can see right there, with a gold tip. Now this is not sharp, but it certainly has more the tip to it than what the sword had. That can slide into the back there. Now my guess is maybe they've begun hunting this guy. He's escaped. Perhaps they're now hunting him down and throwing different weapons at him, trying to bring the beast down. Finally, we just move the tail ever so slightly. There's a hole right through his leg. It actually goes right through his leg. I think it actually goes right through his leg. No, maybe it doesn't. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there's the hole at the back. I was going to say, the hole goes all the way through, and then that just slides straight through his leg. Just straight through. There looks like there's no final kill, shots by them. He's still continuing to push forward. I feel so incredibly bad for this lion. Despite that, though, and despite the fact the angst that this lion, I'm sure, is experiencing, the lion figure is just phenomenal. Love this figure. Now let's put him next to Dorothy, just so you can kind of see how much bigger he is than Dorothy here. I'm assuming as well that at the time these figures were sold, Lion was probably just as much as Dorothy, and perhaps, you know, it would have varied. If you had gotten this from probably a Toys R Us when these were first available, they were probably the same price point. If you had got them at comic book stores after the fact, Lion here probably would have been a little bit more expensive due to his sheer size. Boy, oh boy. I just feel bad looking at the Lion. Okay, so let's go ahead and take the weapons out of his back. Let's take the weapon out of his leg. And actually, you know what? We'll even take the organs out of his stomach as well, and his hand. We'll put those to the side. In the way of Lion's posability, now it's limited. It's basically what you would expect the Lion to have. Head articulation, just a standard swivel back and forth. Waist swivel. Now that's the problem with the McFarlane line. Because they are pre-posed, they're sculpted really in such a way that when you move the torso, it ruins the flow of the big gap in his stomach area here. It looks wrong then with the rest of his waist. So you want to kind of keep this always straight. And it just makes a little bit more sense that way. The arms do rotate, but you can see one big glaring issue. You can't rotate the arm too forward because he's got a plate that's right on the front here. It blocks everything. You can move it back, granted, but you can't move it any further than that. He does have a swivel just at the bicep area, a swivel also in the hand. This arm can move all the way around. It's not as impeded by you know, that little plate there. And he does also have a rotation in the hand and also an arm swivel. So it's basically about the same on both hands, just this one's a little bit more limited. Legs, well, legs you're really not going to get anything out of them. You could, now there's no swivel, there's no nothing to it. There's what looks to be a cut right here, but it doesn't look like it wants to move on the figure, so I'm just going to assume it's the way it's been put together. The tail doesn't have articulation in the traditional standpoint of having it rotate, but the tail does have a wireframe, which is a pleasant treat, as you can bend the tail depending on how you want to have it displayed. Let me also just touch base on just again, the tail has now been exposed. You can see all the little bone there, also in the side. Again, this poor lion. It's a great sculpt, but it does have a certain acquired taste. And I really should mention that for all these reviews of the twisted McFarlane lines. Very much like the fairy tales, the Wizard of Oz has a catered taste. It's not everybody's liking. This is basically for horror fans. Again, a spin on a classic fairy tale story. But I just absolutely love that line. If this line was the first figure I was going to pick up, it would be a guaranteed feeling that I would pick up all the other figures based on how good the sculpt was on this guy right here. Today's spooktacular Spot was continuing his looks at the twisted land of Oz. We were looking today at the not-so-cowardly lion. Stay tuned, guys. Spot's going to have more spooky spots coming to you this month of Spottober. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time. Actually, Spot's got just one little bit that he wants to tack on to this video review of the Cowardly Lion. Actually, with the spear, what you can do, and it's not the easiest, you can actually run the spear all the way from the top. Let me rephrase that. You can feed the spear from the bottom to the top so that it looks like the spear has gone straight through. There's actually a secondary hole, a much larger hole that's at the top area of this open gap. And what you want to do, just kind of move these out of the way. This is very, very tricky to accomplish, mind you. But even like looking at pictures online of the Cowardly Lion, it is something you can accomplish. The end result, though, is it does scrape considerably the spear handle. But what you can do, though, is line it up, feeding obviously the spear from the bottom. You can't fit the blade through. Feed it up, and then just slide it up through the top of his back, the little spine there. And you get something that looks like that. Because I did notice that there was a secondary hole right there, right above the hole where his his entrails are going to be sticking out of. And sure enough, this spear actually runs straight through. Just want to add this part of the video because just in case you have this figure at home and thought the spear could go through, it actually can. It's a little difficult, but it can actually go through the Cowardly Lion. See you guys next time.